Before the penalty, before the tears, before the world finally ran out of arguments, there was a different image. A small boy in Rosario, Argentina. Too small, they said, too weak, too expensive, growth hormone deficiency. At 11 years old, while other kids were dreaming about scoring goals in packed stadiums, Lionel Messi was learning how to inject himself every night just to grow, not to become a footballer, just to become normal. Newell's Old Boys couldn't pay for the treatment. River Plate wouldn't risk the investment. The Argentine Federation didn't intervene. He was a prodigy no one could afford. And then came Barcelona. A trial, 10 minutes, a napkin contract. One executive saw something that spreadsheets couldn't measure. Barcelona didn't just sign a player. They signed a gamble against biology. They signed a bet against probability. They signed a boy whose body said no, but whose brain was already playing in the future. Because that's the part most people still don't understand. Messi wasn't just technically gifted. He was neurologically different. While defenders reacted, he anticipated. While others saw space, he calculated movement. Before the ball reached his foot, he already knew the ending. And yet, for all the goals, for all the magic, for all the trophies, there was always that missing piece. He could conquer Europe, but could he conquer destiny? That question followed him across 2 decades, and it brought him back to that penalty spot in Qatar. Because for all the brilliance, for all the numbers that broke logic, for all the Ballon d'Or trophies lined up like museum artifacts, there was always one unfinished sentence. Can Lionel Messi carry a nation? Not Barcelona. Not a system built perfectly around him. Not Xavi and Iniesta at their peak. Not Guardiola's machine. Argentina. A country that doesn't treat football as sport, but as inheritance. Maradona had done it in 1986. Dragged a flawed team to the summit. Scored the goal of the century. Became myth before retirement. Messi? He had lost 4 finals with Argentina. Copa América 2007, World Cup 2014, Copa América 2015, Copa América 2016. 4 times he reached the door. 4 times it closed. And every time it closed, the narrative hardened. He disappears in finals. He isn't a leader. He's not Maradona. It didn't matter that he was Argentina's top scorer. It didn't matter that he carried average squads further than they should have gone. It didn't matter that football is 11 men, not 1. Greatness in Argentina is not judged by context, it's judged by one image. A trophy lifted in blue and white. So the real question was never about talent, it was psychological. Could the most technically gifted player in history become the most emotionally resilient? Could a quiet, introverted genius become the spiritual engine of a nation? Could Lionel Messi evolve from artist to leader to immortal? Everything that happened in Qatar was the answer to that question. But immortality doesn't begin in stadiums. It begins in insecurity. Lionel Messi grew up not just small but aware of it. In Argentina, football culture worships strength, power, personality, noise. Messi was none of those things. He didn't shout, he didn't demand, he didn't intimidate, he observed. At Newell's Old Boys, he was already better than everyone. That part was obvious. Coaches whispered about him. Parents stood behind fences just to watch him touch the ball. But even at 12 years old, he learned something dangerous. Being the best doesn't protect you. Because when the growth hormone diagnosis came, everything shifted. He wasn't a prodigy anymore. He was a liability. Clubs didn't say it publicly. They didn't need to. He cost too much. Talent without physical certainty is risk, and Argentina doesn't invest in risk. So when Barcelona called, it wasn't romantic. It was survival. 13 years old, separated from friends, separated from family. Nightly injections still part of his routine. La Masia wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed to eliminate weakness. Hundreds entered. Few survived. Messi survived because he learned something early, something that would define his entire career. If he couldn't win physically, he would win intellectually. He stopped trying to overpower defenders. He started studying them. Before receiving the ball, he scanned constantly, head turning, eyes calculating. By the time the pass reached him, he had already mapped the next 3 seconds. Most players react. Messi predicted. And yet, for all that genius, leadership was never natural to him. When Ronaldinho was Barcelona's king, Messi followed. When Guardiola built the empire, Messi executed. When Xavi orchestrated midfield control, Messi finished movements. He didn't need to speak. The system spoke for him. But Argentina was never a system, it was chaos. The national team was politics, egos, managerial instability, short-term thinking, and Messi inherited the heaviest burden in international football. Maradona. It didn't matter that the squad around him was unbalanced. It didn't matter that coaches changed constantly. It didn't matter that finals are decided by moments, not narratives. In 2014, he dragged Argentina to a World Cup final with a team that struggled creatively. He scored in the group stage. He created chances in the knockouts. He carried them. And in the final, one missed chance by Higuain, one goal by Guts, and suddenly, history wrote something cruel. Maradona would have won it. Messi walked past the trophy to collect the golden ball. The image became iconic. Head down, expression empty. The world interpreted it as failure. They never noticed something deeper. He looked tired. Not physically. Existentially. Then came 2 Copa América finals lost on penalties. And in 2016, after missing from the spot himself, he retired from international football. 29 years old. Done. That retirement wasn't dramatic. It was exhausted. He had given everything. And it wasn't enough. That was the moment Messi faced his true breaking point. Not injury, not criticism, not rivalry with Ronaldo, rejection. He wasn't rejecting Argentina. He felt Argentina rejecting him. And here is the emotional truth most people missed. Messi had never learned how to fail publicly. Barcelona protected him. Success protected him. But international football exposed him. He came back from retirement 2 months later. But something changed. He wasn't chasing validation anymore. He wasn't chasing comparison. He was chasing closure. By 2018, after losing to France in the World Cup, the narrative was nearly settled. Greatest club player ever. International underachiever. Incomplete. That word followed him everywhere. Incomplete. And when you tell a genius he is incomplete long enough, he either fractures or evolves. Everything that happened after 2018 was evolution. Because the version of Lionel Messi that walked into the 2019 season was not the same player who had retired in frustration 3 years earlier. He was quieter, colder, less desperate to be loved, more focused on control. Barcelona, meanwhile, was beginning to decay around him. The board was unstable. Managers rotated. Transfers failed. The structure that had once elevated him was crumbling. And for the first time in his career, Messi wasn't playing inside perfection. He was playing inside dysfunction. That changes a player. He stopped relying on system superiority. He became the system, dropping deeper, dictating tempo, choosing when to accelerate and when to freeze a match. In 2019, he produced one of the most complete individual seasons ever recorded. 51 goals, 19 assists. Every defensive scheme built entirely around stopping him. And yet, when Liverpool scored 4 at Anfield, the narrative reset. Collapse. Again. That was the moment something subtle shifted inside him. Because Messi realized something brutal. Perfection doesn't guarantee destiny. Barcelona's empire had insulated him for years. Now the insulation was gone. Then came 2020. The 8-2 Bayern Munich tearing Barcelona apart in Lisbon. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a funeral. The dynasty that had built Messi's legacy died in 90 minutes. He walked off the pitch looking not angry, but finished. He tried to leave Barcelona that summer, publicly, openly. For the first time in his career, he broke silence, because staying meant drowning with the ship. But contracts trapped him. Politics trapped him. Loyalty trapped him. So he stayed one more season, dragging a broken club to relevance. 30 goals in La Liga. Moments of brilliance that felt almost lonely. Then the unthinkable happened. Barcelona couldn't renew his contract. Not because they didn't want to. Because financially, they couldn't. After 21 years, Lionel Messi left Barcelona in tears. The press conference is still hard to watch. Not rage, not bitterness, just disbelief. His entire adult identity dissolved in one afternoon. He moved to Paris Saint-Germain. And the football world thought the move would extend dominance. Instead, it exposed fragility. In Paris, Messi wasn't the center of gravity. He was an addition. The chemistry felt off, the rhythm unfamiliar. For the first time in his career, he looked human. He was booed at home games, whistled. The greatest player of his generation, treated like a luxury experiment. But beneath the awkward adaptation, something powerful was forming. Because away from Barcelona's shadow, Messi was shedding identity. He wasn't trying to be the genius savior anymore. He was learning how to coexist. And then 2021 arrived. Copa América, Brazil, Maracanã, the same stadium where his World Cup dream died in 2014, the same ghost. This time, something felt different. Not tactically, emotionally. Argentina wasn't built around superstardom anymore. They were built around sacrifice. Rodrigo de Paul running until exhaustion. Emiliano Martinez screaming leadership. Otamendi defending like it was personal. And Messi, he wasn't just scoring. He was leading without shouting. 4 goals, 5 assists. Player of the tournament. But more importantly, presence. When Argentina beat Brazil 1-0 in the final, the camera didn't find celebration first. It found collapse. Messi fell to the ground, cried. Not because he had won. Because he had finally closed something. That Copa América mattered more than people understood. It wasn't about the trophy. It was about belief. For the first time in his life, Argentina didn't see Messi as incomplete. They saw him as theirs. That changes a man. Because validation from a club is professional. Validation from a nation is existential. From that night forward, Messi didn't play for redemption. He played with freedom. The pressure was lighter. The accusations quieter. The ghosts softer. By the time the 2022 World Cup approached, he was 35. No longer the fastest, no longer the most explosive, but perhaps more dangerous than ever, because now, he understood something his younger self didn't. Greatness isn't about proving people wrong. It's about finishing your own story. And Qatar wasn't going to be a campaign. It was going to be a conclusion. But conclusions don't begin beautifully. They begin with doubt. November 22nd, 2022, Argentina vs Saudi Arabia. Messi scored early, calm, controlled, expected, and then Saudi Arabia scored twice in 5 minutes. Argentina lost. The greatest upset in modern World Cup history. In one afternoon, the fairy tale script collapsed. Social media exploded. Finished. Too old. History repeating. All the ghosts returned at once. 4 lost finals. Missed penalties. An aging squad. 1 loss. And suddenly Qatar felt like Russia 2018 all over again. Messi walked off that pitch differently. Not devastated. Focused. Because something about him had changed since 2018. In 2014, he had carried Argentina. In 2018, he had tried to rescue them. In 2022, he didn't try to do everything. He chose moments. That's evolution. Against Mexico, with Argentina on the edge of elimination, the match suffocated itself into tension. Second half, crowd nervous, team static, and then Messi did something he had done thousands of times before, but never under this weight. He struck from outside the box. Low, precise, violent. Goal. Not just a goal. Resurrection. He didn't celebrate wildly. He stood still. Arms slightly raised. Controlled fury. Argentina won 2-0. The tournament restarted. Then came Poland. Qualification secured. Australia in the round of 16. He scored his first ever World Cup knockout goal. The irony. The man who never delivered in knockouts, now delivering when the stakes were absolute. But the real breaking point wasn't Australia. It was the Netherlands. Quarterfinal. A match that turned toxic. Fouls, verbal abuse, psychological warfare. Argentina led 2-0. Messi assisting one, scoring the other from the penalty spot. Control, then chaos. 2 Dutch goals late. 2-2 extra time. Penalties. And here is where the psychological stakes escalated. Because Messi had missed in a Copa América final. Because Messi had retired after a missed penalty. Because history loves repetition. He stepped up first. Scored, no hesitation. Emiliano Martinez saved 2. Argentina advanced. And after the final whistle, Messi didn't walk away calmly. He stared at the Dutch bench. Kimi Ras Bobo. For the first time, the quiet genius wasn't quiet. He wasn't seeking approval. He wasn't protecting image. He was competing. That mattered. 'Cause leaders are not always loud, but they are never passive. Croatia in the semifinal. Modric. Experience. Discipline. This was supposed to be controlled. Instead, Messi produced one of the greatest World Cup performances ever recorded. Penalty goal. Then that assist. The run against Gvardiol, one of the best young defenders in the world. Messi froze him 3 times. 5 times. Dragging him across the byline before cutting the ball back for Alvarez. It wasn't speed, it was manipulation. He bent space. Argentina won 3-0. Final secured. And now, France, Mbappe. The heir apparent, the future against the past. The final wasn't a match, it was mythology colliding. Messi scored from the penalty spot, 0. Argentina dominated. Di Maria scored 2-0. 75 minutes, it looked comfortable. Then Mbappe. Penalty. 2-1. 90 seconds later. Volley. 2-2. In 2 minutes, the world shifted. Extra time. And this is where legacy trembled. Messi scored again. Scramble in the box. He followed his shot, crossed the line. 3-2. He ran to the corner. Arms wide. Finally. But football is cruel. Mbappe scored again. Hat-trick in a World Cup final. 3-3. And now we were back where this story began. Penalties. History compressing into 5 kicks. Messi walked to the spot first. Because that's what leaders do. He didn't smash it. He didn't blast it. He rolled it calmly into the corner. Goal. Mbappe scored. Martinez saved. Argentina scored again. And then France missed. Montiel stepped up, scored. Argentina champions. Messi didn't scream immediately. He dropped to his knees. Then he smiled. Not relief. Completion. Because the accusation was gone. Incomplete. Erased. He lifted the trophy. Kissed it. Held it the way a man holds something he's been chasing his entire life. And in that moment, the rivalry debates dissolved. The club comparisons dissolved. The statistical arguments dissolved. Because greatness in football isn't only about numbers. It's about narrative closure. He didn't just win a World Cup. He rewrote the emotional verdict on his career. From fragile prodigy, to silent genius, to fallen hero, to immortal. But immortality is never granted by a trophy alone. It is chosen. And Lionel Messi made his choice long before Montiel's penalty hit the net. The real decision wasn't in Lusail. It was in 2016, after the missed penalty, after the 4th lost final, after announcing retirement from Argentina in a press conference that felt more like surrender than goodbye. I tried my hardest. That sentence revealed everything. He wasn't angry, he was tired. Tired of carrying expectation. Tired of comparison. Tired of the word incomplete. That summer, he could have walked away from international football forever. No one would have blamed him. He had Barcelona. He had trophies. He had money. He had validation. But immortality requires confrontation. And Messi decided to return. Not because critics demanded it. Not because federation officials persuaded him. Because something inside him refused to end the story that way. That was the first decision. The second came quietly. Years later, after the Copa América win in 2021, he could have treated it as closure. He could have entered Qatar satisfied. Instead, he framed the World Cup as his final mission. My last World Cup. Not nostalgic. Intentional. He accepted the pressure rather than avoiding it. That matters. Because young Messi often carried weight silently. Older Messi embraced it publicly. And in Qatar, every match revealed a man no longer hiding behind genius. He shouted at referees. He confronted opponents. He demanded from teammates. He took the first penalty in every shootout. He spoke before matches. Not long speeches. Just clear ones. Now we go. That was the evolution. Not faster, not stronger, more decisive. He no longer needed to be liked. He needed to finish. And here is the truth most people miss about leadership. It is not volume. It is responsibility. In the final, when Argentina lost control after Mbappe's 2 goals, Messi didn't disappear. He didn't drift. He kept asking for the ball, even at 35. Even exhausted. Even aware that one mistake could define his legacy forever. He scored in extra time. He stepped up first in the shootout. He chose exposure. That is the decision. Because immortality is not built on perfection. It is built on willingness to stand at the edge and not retreat. The boy who once injected hormones just to grow tall enough to compete had grown into a man willing to face history head-on, not once, but repeatedly. And that is why the trophy meant more than gold. It meant authorship. He did not let critics write his ending. He wrote it himself. And when he lifted that trophy in Qatar, something extraordinary happened. Not noise. Not chaos. Silence. For 20 years, Lionel Messi had existed inside argument. Better than Ronaldo. Worse than Maradona. Greatest club player ever. International failure. Every achievement was followed by a qualifier. Until that night. When he lifted the World Cup, the qualifiers disappeared. Because this wasn't statistical greatness. This was narrative completion. Think about what he had just done. Scored in the group stage. Scored in the round of 16. Scored in the quarterfinal. Scored in the semifinal. Scored twice in the final. Converted in the shootout. There had never been a World Cup campaign quite like it from a single player at 35 years old. He didn't carry a perfect team. He carried belief. And the most powerful image wasn't the lift. It was the walk. The walk toward the trophy before extra time ended. Hands on hips, breathing heavily, staring at it, like a man who had been chasing a shadow for 15 years and finally saw it standing still. When he held it above his head, something shifted globally. Even his rivals stopped arguing. Even neutral fans felt it. This wasn't about fandom anymore. It was about witnessing the final chapter of an era. Because for over a decade, football had been defined by Messi versus Ronaldo. Two peaks, two styles, two philosophies of greatness, one explosive, one surgical, but immortality in sport is rarely shared. And on that night, Messi crossed a line that few athletes in any discipline ever cross. He closed every open debate. He answered every unfinished question. He didn't just become the greatest of his generation. He stepped into historical territory. Pelé, Maradona, names spoken without footnotes. And here's the part that makes it cinematic. He did it without changing who he was. He didn't become louder. He didn't reinvent his personality. He didn't perform dominance. He remained Lionel Messi. Quiet, precise, emotionally controlled until the moment emotion could no longer be contained. That's the paradox. The boy too small to survive. The teenager who left home for injections and uncertainty. The man who retired from his country in exhaustion. Finished his career arc not with vengeance, but with fulfillment. And when the stadium lights dimmed in Lusail, when the confetti fell, when the camera zoomed in on his smile, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like peace, because triumph is loud, peace is quiet, and Lionel Messi had spent 2 decades inside noise, debates, comparisons, expectations that bordered on obsession. He had been analyzed frame by frame, measured by trophies, reduced to statistics. But in Lusail, something changed. For the first time since he was 13 years old, stepping onto a plane to Barcelona, he didn't look like he was trying to prove anything. He looked complete, not because he needed the World Cup to validate his talent, but because the story no longer had an open wound. The boy from Rosario who was told he was too small lifted the biggest trophy in the world. The teenager who left home for medical treatment gave his country healing. The man who once retired in frustration returned to finish what he started. And here's the truth that makes his journey different from every other legend. Messi never chased immortality by trying to be larger than life. He became immortal by mastering the smallest details. The touch that kills a defender's balance. The pause that bends time. The scan before the pass arrives. While others tried to overpower history, he outthought it. In the end, the image that defines him isn't a scream. It's that soft smile after the final whistle. A man who no longer carries weight. A genius who no longer needs defense. The question that followed him for 20 years, can he do it for his country, no longer echoes. Because the answer is framed forever in gold. And maybe that's the most poetic part. The world once doubted whether he could grow tall enough to compete. Now his shadow stretches across football history. Not because he was the loudest, not because he was the strongest, but because he endured. Lionel Messi was never normal, and that was exactly the point.